I'm Jim Tech with Now Media. With me in studio, Macklin McCall. First time for a long-form interview with Macklin McCall, conservative MLA for West Kelowna, Peachland. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. Lots going on in the interior here. Obviously in healthcare, you put out that post on social media the other day supporting Gavin Dew's call for the resignation of Susan Brown, the CEO of Interior Health.
Yes. Yeah.
You guys are going to also do a town hall. July 2nd, a town hall, and you've asked Josie Osborne to join you here. We got a statement from her yesterday, and it doesn't sound like she's coming yet, but I don't think they're going to be able to put a lid on this. They're saying that they don't want this to be politicized, but I think, when the doctors are speaking out, there's not much choice, and that's your guys' job, actually, as the opposition, to bring attention to issues that are boiling over in the communities.
Well, absolutely. I saw that as well. That they don't want it politicized. I don't think it's political at all. I mean, as you said, it's our job as the official opposition to, work for the people in our riding. It's a very serious issue. The pediatrics is closed. Doctors and medical staff are sounding the alarm of, they're saying cultural issues. They're saying there's issues not just with the service delivery there with the pediatric closure and so on, but just things aren't going well. They're unhappy about it. I don't think it's political at all. I think that it's, as you said, it's our job to do it. And I mean, children aren't being political when they need to go to the hospital. Mothers aren't when they have to take their kid in. And it's
I think sorry, Josie Osborne, but that's what a democracy is. The opposition is supposed to call attention to and bring to light and shine a light on areas that need attention. It's not politicizing something, it's actually democracy in action.
Well, it absolutely is. Like, we work for the not just the doctors, but the constituents, the patients. And, there's an issue and we need to bring it. And quite frankly, this is something when I was campaigning and I was going and talking to a lot of people going door to door during the election and leading up to it, I found that there certainly are political things. There's things that are very, hey, conservatives are doing this and we're the only ones doing that. Sure. But a lot of the stuff we were standing on, the stuff I was talking to people in my riding that they were upset about, it was things that I don't think are political at all. They're not partisan. I mean, it doesn't matter how you vote. You may need a doctor one day. You might need to go to the hospital. You might need to go to a pediatrician in the emergency department. So I don't think it's political at all.
Yeah, and Interior Health, lots of stuff going on. We do the stories almost on a daily basis of Lillooet ER closure, Oliver ER closure, Merritt ER closure, 100 Mile House. I mean, that's all Interior Health. And then, I guess it's easier to ignore those and make an excuse and say, well, those are remote communities. They're not that remote. Remote communities and tough to get doctors and nurses in there. But Kelowna is a major center. Like, this is the biggest center outside the Lower Mainland. And not to have a pediatric ward and to have that many pediatricians leave the hospital and refuse to work there. And then I know when that first doctor, the young lady doctor, I can't remember her last name, Dr. Hannah, and I can't remember her last name, when she put that TikTok out and I said, well, she's going to get it, right? Because she used her voice. But the next day, I think it was the 7 doctors that signed, that supported her. And then after that, 130. So it's really tough now to ignore it. So I mean, to say it's a politicized issue is that you have the doctors and the nurses speaking out. And then your job then is to amplify that voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that from what I've heard from talking to doctors and nurses about this particular issue, this didn't just spring on them today or just last week. It's been something doctors have been sounding the alarm to Interior Health for a while. And nothing wasn't done, and it just came to light for the public to be made aware of it once we had doctors and nurses saying, hey, here's the issues. So, clearly keeping it hush-hush and swept under the rug here is a problem. It got it to be as big of an issue as it is today, where they've shut down pediatrics. Well, we need to really look at this. How do we solve the issue if we don't look at the problem?
So I guess we've identified the problem, and it's big. And I think it's massive for the Okanagan, and because this is a regional hospital. So what's the path forward? You say you've talked to some of the doctors, you've talked to some of the nurses. Are the pediatricians willing to come back to the hospital if they see changes?
I don't know. I haven't spoke to any pediatricians affected by this. I know some of my colleagues here in Kelowna have, but I think that firstly we've got the closure of the pediatric ward, unit, right? The ward, and that's the first thing. And I had with my other colleagues here in Kelowna, Christina Lowe and Gavin Dew, we sat down and had a meeting in KGH with several of the doctors and with Interior Health. And my worry was, okay, well, we're looking at pediatrics today. This is what happened. Well, what assurances do we have this isn't happening as we speak with other wards or other units in the hospital, or that we're going to see the same issues with the ER? So, if there is a culture, I mean, first we have to get the pediatrics open, and that needs to be done right away here. And I think there's chats about that, but we do need to make sure that if we had $1 trillion sitting here right now, ready to go, that's ready to be used, money no object, we'll hire everyone we need, we'll build out everything we need. Well, if you can't get people to come to Kelowna to work in the first place, you have a bigger problem. You can have all the money in the world, but if people don't want to come to Kelowna and work, that's a problem. And in the meetings I've had, here the other day, and just chatting with medical, both doctors and nurses from KGH, there seems to be a cultural issue, and I think that needs to be just as much of a priority as the pediatrics, because, I mean, what's going to happen next after this? I mean, people just don't want to work here, it sounds like, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I did talk to Christina Lowen and asked her, if she supported Gavin Dew's call for Susan Brown's resignation, and she supported that, and she said she's not really typically just blaming Susan Brown, but she's kind of a lame duck CEO as it is with this big problem. She's only got 6 months to go before she retires. So putting in a new leadership that actually would have a path forward is what she supports. Is that where you sit, or?
Yes, I support that. Look, I'm not trying to single out her as a person or whatever. She has got a job to do. So does everyone else in Interior Health, and it's about keeping people safe. There's a public safety component to this as well as the healthcare end of it. And as you said, the CEO's we already know that she's leaving, but we've got a crisis right now here in KGH, and are we adequately going to be working on this sufficiently to actually solve it now, today, and not 6 months from now or longer when a new CEO is named? We can't wait 6 months. The thing that's unique about a hospital and just healthcare in general is, if this was a business and you're operating a business, and the business, they go, let's say, the first quarter and they don't make enough profit and they're unhappy and they said, we made a mistake, okay, we need to adjust here, we didn't make enough profit. That's really the jeopardy. The problem with the hospital and KGH and pediatrics, emergency, all of this is if there's issues, if you're shutting down pediatrics, if people don't want to work there because it's a toxic environment, if you've got all of these things, if you're making mistakes, people die. The jeopardy is very high here. We can't just say, well, we'll trust that it will work. We can't wait for this. We've already waited, and look what we have now. We need to take action now.
So I guess the question, and I asked this of Christina Lowen as well, is the CEO, just like a coach of a hockey team, you kind of take responsibility, because you get paid a big salary. With great, rewards comes great responsibility. That's kind of her job. But I guess outside, because she's saying that she's aware of this toxic culture out there. But where is it if it's just she's not saying it's her? So is it the people underneath her, or is it the board above her? So how deep is the rot that's causing this culture problem? Do you have any idea where that's at?
Well, I don't know specifics like units and names and these people, but I've worked in quite a large institution, a national thing being the Mounties, and so I do have a bit of a sympathy with the situation they're going through, because with the RCMP, it's so big, there's so many provinces and stuff. It's a big beast, for lack of a better term, even KGH or just healthcare in general. I would imagine there's probably quite a few issues that are contributing to this. It's not just maybe one person is the responsibility. I don't think that's the case. I think that the way that, from what I'm hearing, from what I'm being told, is that there's quite a lot of moving parts to the issue. So if we just look at, well, pediatrics is the issue. We'll focus on that, and we do need to focus on that. And we need to get that up and running today. But there's all these other parts. And for a while, I've been hearing from nurses at KGH that things were an issue. And just today, we saw a media story come out of Vernon Jubilee Hospital, again, Interior Health. And these were nurses that were hiding kind of their identities as they talk to the media, because they're not allowed to talk to the media, saying, here's more issues at this hospital. So I think it sounds like it's not just one hospital, or it's not just one person. It sounds like it's perhaps the culture in healthcare.
It could be Health BC too, because we do see that doctor in Surrey there that's now suing Fraser Valley Health because she was disciplined for speaking out as well. So, maybe some of this responsibility belongs to the BC NDP, Josie Osborne, Adrian Dix in the past, because this culture didn't happen today. Like you said, it's Josie Osborne is new to the role. Adrian Dix had that role. So I think getting to the bottom, because healthcare is such an important part of everything for people, especially, like this community with a lot of older population. And again, with the younger kids too, it's tougher when you have to take your child to Vancouver, because then the support network isn't around the child as well, because, like families have to work, and then there's extra costs and all those different things. I guess the thing is how do we get it fixed in the shortest amount of time? And I think, when the NDP says they don't want to politicize it, and they said let's work together, then how open have they been with your party in working together? Have they called you into meetings and said, let's sit down and talk about this, or are you kind of closed out?
Well, they haven't talked to me about anything healthcare related. I have had, essentially, I would say, when was the election in November? Almost day one. Before the election, when I was still the nominee campaigning, I was having medical staff from this hospital that we're talking about concerns. I've talked with my colleagues in the Conservative caucus. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. It's not just a KGH thing. It's a provincial thing. We're seeing it all over. As you said, you named some smaller places. The ERs are shutting down. There's all kinds of other issues. I have never had any conversation with anyone in the NDP. Here's my
Nobody
issues.
said, hey, come to these meetings, let's get involved.
No.
Has Interior Health called you and let's have meetings with yourselves and the NDP? No,
and so, and to their credit, other ministries that I've raised issues with, they've talked to me. There's been communication. I'm actually kind of a little surprised at how important, as you said, healthcare is, not just here, but across the province. Everyone, it's nonpartisan, I would say, and how much of a lack of communication there is with us, and with everybody else, for that matter, trying to get a solution to the issues. And quite frankly, just to add to that, I know that the MLA for Kelowna Mission, Gavin Dew, he back around the time of the election was reaching out to Interior Health, wanting a briefing, wanting an update. And it really took this issue here for him to get any kind of response from Interior Health. So it's been quite underwhelming, really, any kind of...
So this town hall is kind of you guys reaching out, though. You're saying, Josie Osborne, come to the town hall. Yeah. And so this is open to the community as well. So it's going to be held at the Rutland Centennial Hall?
I haven't confirmed that. Okay. I'm not certain on the last I heard, the last update I had is that it's to be determined. So they will be coming out. But I do know it's July 2nd. At least 5:30 to 7. Yeah.
I've talked to Gavin and seen about if Kelowna now can live stream it as well to get it out to a larger audience as well, right? Because it is a big concern for so many people. I imagine you're going to get a pretty full house. So.
Well, I've already had people from other communities contact me. What has it been, like 24 hours or less? I've had other communities saying, we want to come.
You may need a bigger venue.
Yes, quite frankly. And actually, I think that's amazing, because as you said, this is democracy. If the minister comes and does what we first asked and comes and has a chat with doctors at KGH, that's great. If not, we're still going to run this town hall anyway to give that voice to the people and let the people really hear what is going on.
Are there any doctors or nurses scheduled to speak at this event as well? Do you know?
I'm unaware of the particulars of the event, but what we're trying to we want to have the public involved in this. We want to make sure that there's a voice, that democracy is heard. And if the minister isn't going to come, we're going to run it anyway, because there's still voices that need to be heard.
There's no putting the lid back on this pot. There's no putting it back on, no matter how much Josie Osborne would like it to go away. Because there's two pots that I believe that are just bubbling over with the NDP right now that they have no control over. That's the ferry deal, The BC ferry thing, I don't think we'll talk much about the ferry thing because, I mean, there's a few people working on that on the Conservative side. And then obviously the healthcare crisis. But you're also, being a former member of the RCMP, you're a critic for safety.
Emergency management. Yeah.
So what does that entail, and where do you see some of the holes here right now with the NDP government?
So when I first got into it, I thought, well, emergency management, that's like, it's almost like a public safety, which there's a ministry of. It's quite broad. It isn't that. It's more emergency, like how the government responds to, how they respond to emergencies. Now, wildfires particularly are actually forestry deals with that. So emergency management is just, when there's an emergency, how is it being responded to? I'm not a fan of the manner and how it's operating right now. I think it should be much more streamlined. It should be all about service delivery. How are we delivering the service in terms of emergency management? Like particular with wildfires, we just had a major one in West Kelowna in my riding a few years ago now. There should be a proactive response. I'm very big on, I used to be a firefighter with forestry before I joined the RCMP, and I fought fires here in the Okanagan. There was a time prior to the NDP where there's kind of climate. We can't take some of these tried and tested and true ways of addressing fire because of other things like climate and smoke and all this. But we don't focus on proactive stuff as much as we should, and what we
like
used
the mitigation.
To. Exactly. Yeah. Controlled burns, going in and cutting out the fuel and all that stuff. I think there should be a proactive response, but we should be looking at emergencies before they happen, during, and after.
Assessing I mean, I've done interviews a lot, and I've done it with quite a few people here 3-4 years ago, and you look at the mountain over there and you say, that's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And we know that fire roars up a hill. I work for AFS too, Alberta Forestry. And we know that fire loves to race up a hill, and it doesn't take much, a couple of minutes, right? And that's like when we lost all those homes there a couple of years ago. Mitigating that by removing the firewood, I guess you want to say, the fuel around homes is the most important thing, and that's what mitigation is, right? And we do very little of that. If we look at the budget, what's spent on fighting fire versus mitigation, it's minuscule.
It is, and we used to do more. There's been a lot, and it has been more climate, the smoke and all this, and so we can't do some of that stuff, like burns. But mitigation is even just going in and cleaning it up without burning anything. But we went away from that, and I mean, the cost of fighting the fire, that's like $100 million. Well, the mitigation, that costs money. But it's proactive, and you can do it in the spring and the fall outside the season. Like there are other options. I just think that one thing that would be very useful, and I know since myself and the forestry critic, Ward Stamer, we've been really talking about proactive. I'm starting to hear the forestry minister and the
Well, I've got good news for you that the G7, they signed an agreement with the G7 saying that they're going to be proactive with controlled burns. And stuff like that, because that has to come, and I've brought it up many times. I've interviewed the forest minister and the premier and a few people in the industry, in the sawmills and that, and saying, that is one of the most important things to get done, but it doesn't get done. And the forestry, a young forest, we looked at Finland, a young forest, they don't have very many fires, right? Like if it's all related to climate change, it would burn on that side of the planet just as well as it burns on this side of the planet. It is because they actively manage their forests more. And our forest industry is, according to John Rustad, Kevin Falcon, and a bunch of other people, is that it's in shambles, right?
Yes. Well, one thing too is with that is I've talked to several people with forestry backgrounds, firefighter, BC Wildfire Service personnel, and stuff like this, and they say that we're probably at roughly 20 years of fuel is all stacked up out there, waiting to be either removed or burned.
When, right?
Exactly, and that's a lot. And normally, as you said, you've got other countries that manage it well, and the fuel's not there. Well, if you don't have fuel, you don't have the
That's
threat.
How the fire goes out.
Exactly,
when it runs out of fuel, right? So, and I know that I've talked to some AI companies too that are doing mapping now, and it's going to be. I think the insurance industry is going to drive a lot of this as well, because they're going to stop insuring homes that have a lot of pines hanging over top of the homes, right? So I think that's going to motivate a lot of people, right? I took 20 pines out of my yard just for that reason, right? So because they're basically, that fuel is just hanging right over your house, right?
Well, there's an education component to it as well. Like West Kelowna, I had quite a few conversations with the forestry minister regarding these types of ideas and proactive and fuel mitigation, this type of thing. And my riding in West Kelowna, the city of West Kelowna, is actually potentially leading British Columbia in Fire Smart and what they're doing. And what that really is, it kind of touches with everything we've talked about is, I mean, it's one thing where you've got massive fuel outside, kilometers outside of a community, but what about inside the community? And so that Fire Smart is kind of taking your own property, getting the knowledge and getting experience and getting someone who knows this stuff to show you what to do to remove the fuel around your house. So if a fire does come through, there's nothing to burn, your house doesn't burn. West Kelowna is doing a very good job in that, and that's another thing that's a proactive step that I've been talking quite a bit with the Minister of Forests, saying, you know, what's coming here? It works well in West Kelowna. Is there a pilot? Like, how are we going to keep this going and stuff? Because, like you said, it's not a matter of if, it's when. And if we can reduce the severity and frequency of these fires, it's going to go a long way.
I have a family member that's actually working in the Fire Smart program, going to communities and doing that type of work, and actually doing little workshops and stuff like that, helping people remove the fuel. That's part of the reason I removed the fuel from my house.
Yes.
And it's removing that fuel, and then not. I guess that leads me to the one big question I have for you, being, you know, like the emergency critic kind of thing. Is we've noticed the governments in Canada, especially NDP and the Liberals, seem to be always want to be in crisis management or emergency, where they kind of have more powers. And, you know, David Eby tried to pass those bills there too, to give them these sweeping powers.
Yeah.
Is it just a way for them to kind of like short circuit kind of democracy? Like these emergency, we're always seem to be in this crisis management.
Well, I think that the bills, Bill 7, Bill 14, Bill 15, they brought in, I absolutely think that's why it was brought in. I mean, they explain it's for this, it's for infrastructure, all this. Yeah. Well, I can tell you this, Conservatives are going to 100% support everything they bring through that's BC first, that's helps make life better for British Columbians. But those bills and these things you're talking about, I believe it's just to consolidate power. Whether they say it's not, but it gives them the tools to do that, and we're absolutely opposed to that.
We've seen the use of it, though. We've seen the use of it during COVID, right?
Well, that's
zero consultation
important
with the other parties, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if we can't even get information. I remember asking health information a couple of years ago, and asking, you know, trying to go to the BC United Party and to get information, and they said, "We can't get it, Jim. Can you get it?" And I'm just like, "What do you mean you can't get it?" Right?
Yeah.
They're not sharing information, so that's not. You know, saying politicize this situation, it's keeping that information to yourself, and I don't think that's a good way to run, you know, the biggest corporation in British Columbia, right? The government.
Well, and it should be accountable and transparent to the people. That should be an underlying point of legislation and everything that they're doing. And when this legislation completely circumvents the fact that we've had an election, that we have MLAs, even in opposition or not, that are supposed to work for the people in their riding, well, that is redundant and non-existent if the cabinet and the premier can do literally anything they want just with the stroke of a pen. There's no debate in Victoria. Like it's dangerous, and
they lose some of the moral high ground as well about BC First and how they got to do this because it's BC First when they do the BC Ferry deal. Do you know what I mean? When they give away a multi-billion-dollar project to China, which Mark Carney has identified as the biggest threat to Canada.
Yeah, well, it absolutely is. I mean, you've got, the whole time we were in Victoria here, the spring sitting, we've been talking, BC First, you know, all the stuff, the tariffs with the United States, BC First, we need jobs, we need to create growth, all this stuff, and we need to do those things. And the Premier stood in front of camera and said, we're going to put BC First. We're going to get rid of all the stuff that's not that we're doing right now, business, Crown Corporation.
Two North Song fee, elbows up.
Yeah, we're going to totally, the propaganda, all they were saying. And then they go and do this. You can't tell me there's not a shipyard in BC that could have taken this contract. Yes, you could make the argument that maybe there's
and if there isn't one, build one.
Well, 100%. Jobs. It's supporting
because building
British
one
Columbia.
Would actually help, you know, the economy as well, right?
100%. It would be putting British Columbia first, and they're not doing it. They're putting China first, and
feeding a machine that builds ships, that is one of the biggest shipbuilders, which also builds naval ships. I mean, they have aircraft carriers now and everything. Mm-hmm. China's military is one of the biggest, you know, like second biggest in the world, likely, as far as manpower and equipment goes right now. And we're actually feeding that right now.
Yeah. and all that. Yes, there's an argument perhaps that it might be more expensive, but who cares? You're putting that money back in British Columbia's pockets.
China's being accused of human rights violations.
Yes.
And even by like some of their companies offshore in Brazil with their electric manufacturers, they're being sued by the government of Brazil right now for human rights infractions and not paying workers and stuff like that too, right? So.
Absolutely.
They lose a lot of high ground there, like moral high ground with that kind of stuff.
And I mean, we've been seeing federally, even federal NDP that are calling out the provincial NDP saying this is the wrong approach. And it is. Government should be one of the top reasons they exist should be to put British Columbia first.
So how are you putting your experience as a former firefighter and a former RCMP member to work for you in this community? Are you speaking with members on either side of that? Because I mean, wildfire is obviously a huge concern for us here in the Okanagan Valley, right? It hurts tourism, hurts industry, hurts our quality of life, hurts in health, right? Because of the smoke and stuff like that, and loss of homes.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have talked with RCMP members, built relationships. I kind of do have relationships with a lot of people that I worked with that are still around. Also with the fire department. I chatted with my chief over there for West Kelowna Fire, Chief Brolin.
Yeah, he's a hero in that other fire.
Yeah, right? Well, and he has a lot of knowledge. He has that experience, and so we were able. Actually, I sat down with him not too long ago, maybe about a month or just a few weeks ago. We had a great conversation actually about that fire. I mean, that's quite an interesting fire. How it happened, what the insurance stuff that happened after the fact, how it started, whether the resources immediately being deployed were adequate or not. Like, there's lots of moving parts to it. And my position as opposition and as the critic for emergency management is, with what happened, if you just take that fire, and there's several examples, even now what's happening, how can we improve on that response by the government? How can we make it better and make sure people are safe, that their properties are protected, and that infrastructure is protected? And so it was great chatting with him, and I've been talking to other emergency response personnel, groups that are used to respond in terms of emergency social services, all of this, just to kind of get a lay of the land of what's going well, what needs to be improved on, and what isn't going well. And so it's good, and I'm working on that, and it's great to hear people's perspective on it. There's a lot of good ideas on how to make things better.
There is some good news on that front as well. I just did an interview with the CEO of Fireswarm, which is they're using AI and UAVs to big drones to fight wildfires. They've just got approved by Transport Canada. They did a demonstration. I don't know if you were at the demonstration. They did a demonstration here in Kelowna with the city as well to show these unmanned vehicles that are basically similar to the helicopters. They do the bucket drop, right? But they are jet propelled. They are jet propulsion. And they have about a 2-hour flight time. And the idea is to have these swarm of fire. And then they're working on autonomous as well, at some point, because they can operate 24/7. Yeah. Like they can operate at night where, like we're fighting wildfires here. The bombers are in there, the helicopters are in there, but as the sun goes down, they go home. They have to go back to base, and they start again in the morning, whereas these types of things can continue to fight all night long.
That's quite interesting. I in the last, since I've been elected, there's been a couple of conferences and so on across the province where it's been there has been companies that are coming up with new technology. We're at a pivotal moment, it seems, in terms of traditional ways of fighting fire and new stuff like this. Not only there's universities that are working towards how do we improve that response, and very interesting. I haven't chatted with those.
You have to watch that interview.
I will have to.
Squamish-based again, BC-based company. The only one in the X Prize, have you heard of the X Prize? With this one that started the space race as well. X Prize is a $10 million prize out there for who can develop the best technology to fight fires and rapidly respond to fires. I mean, work in forestry too. That initial attack or response is key, right? Because if you don't put it out right away, it's pretty tough to put it out right. Then you're building guards as opposed to fighting the fire, right? You're just trying to get ahead of it, but. Yeah, it's really cool there. And then there's other companies that I've talked with too that are actually doing mapping from the sky too to see, watching fire spark too. And there's another AI project out there in Predator Ridge as well, where they have monitors out there too. So Again, initial attack is all that important. I think they call it something else now. But it used to be initial attack when I worked there.
I know what you mean when you call it initial attack.
That's what the old school, when I did it back in 1980, I think I was working for AFS, but that was initial attack. I think, anyway, it's a different name today. But anything else you want to share today?
No, I mean, great conversation. We went through quite a bit. And
well, let's do this more often too, right?
Sure.
Because I think it's important for people to connect with their elected officials. That's what the elections are all about, right? And how people can access you. And I encourage people to attend the town hall. I think that's important because if you have health concerns about our health care, I mean, now is the time to raise your voice. And the more people that show up to the event, the NDP can't ignore it either, right? Do you know what I mean? Like if 3 people show up, they're going to say it's nothing, right? If the room is busting over and you have to get a bigger venue, then it's pretty tough to ignore.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it gets people more engaged in issues that matter to them, and hopefully the minister or maybe other elected officials might show up and get more engaged and connected on the issue.
Because the sad thing about a lot of elections is the only time politicians want to talk to us in the media is when they want to get elected, and then they kind of go quiet and they go dark when they're in power, and that's not a healthy democracy. I mean, our job is to hold power accountable. Your job as the opposition is to hold power accountable. So it's not about politicizing an issue. It's about holding power accountable, and that's the only way we get better. I'm sure you played some sports. We only get better when we get tested, right?
Well, there you go.
We only get better when we get tested, right? So, and this is a test for the NDP. So I do thank you for coming in. And we tried this new format out today too. So we're doing the different thing instead of like sitting side by side. We're trying out a new format here. Appreciate comments on that as well. And we're going to see if we can get in a lot more people. We've had calls out to the NDP to interview as well. So we'll see if they're willing to come in. And we do thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.